My experiment is a success, and now it seems they can no longer hold back their sheer adoration.
Hello YouTube, I'm your leify Minsleif, and with 3.1 on the horizon, today we're going to explore topics such as Scaramouche's involvement in the upcoming Archon quest, the identity of the Scarlet King Dottore, as well as Dottore's nefarious plans for specifically the Dendro and Electro Gnosis. After Act 2 the 3.0 Archon quest and the 3.1 livestream trailer that just dropped, you might be wondering, are the Fatui working with the Academia? The 2.8 Golden Apple Archipelago quest showed us that the Fatui were actively looking to replicate and simulate the powers of the Dendro Archon, otherwise known as the God of Dreams, with a machine that can bring to life the most incredible of illusions and mirages. Similarly, we witnessed the dream farming experiment in Act 2 of the recent 3.0 Archon quest. If you don't remember what happens, or you're a certified dialogue skipper, it's okay, I got you. Traveler and Paimon find themselves trapped in a samsara, a constant loop of the day of the Subseru's festival, which we later learn is actually Nilou's dream. The Akasha terminal was being used by the Academia to farm the dreams of the people of Sumeru. The process works by separating one's consciousness and placing it into a host dream. The now vacant dream gets harvested at the end of every cycle. But why dreams? Kusanali notes that dreams are rich bundles of human wisdom since the mind is most active when dreaming. However, this constant state of dreaming causes fatigue. Dunyarzad becomes Dunyarzad, but Kusanali is able to preserve a fragment of her consciousness to keep her alive in the real world. Traveler wakes up Nilou, the samsara finally ends, and the 3.1 trailer seems to insinuate that the Fatui may have had a hand in. This entire dream simulation was powered by the Dendro Gnosis.
And we all know that the Fatui are on the hunt to collect all Gnosis.
Exactly. Possibly powered by an extracted Dendro Gnosis.
Or kusanali on a hamster wheel?
Terrifying. But why would the Academia allow the Fatui to undercut their authority? The answer to that is an exchange and plain old manipulation a la Dottore. The Fatui would have had to offer something of value to the Academia in order to be able to use their resources and the entire city of Sumeru for an experiment. Perhaps the ability to resurrect Greater Lord Drukadevata? There may be a race between the Eremites and the Academia to revive their patron gods. It's interesting how both are so reluctant to enter an era without divine influence, a direct contrast to the plot of Liyue with the Adepti and the Chiseng. Scarlet King Dashret's civilization had technology that far outstripped Drukadevata's, and there are also allegations that Dashret was the original god of wisdom, and that Drukadevata killed him in order to take his title for herself. Evidence for this could be that the original landscape of Sumeru was all desert. The rainforest and the greenery of the eastern half are all supposedly artificial, raised by Drukadevata. Okay, so the Fatui may have offered the prospect of reviving Drukadevata to the Academia, but why in the world would they ever let Dottore back on their premises? According to the wise doctor's opinion of the Pale Flame set, Dottore was a scholar in Sumeru, who had ambitions to create enhanced humans. An idea that got him immediately denounced by the Academia. It's heavily implied that Dottore is just the Fatui moniker of the Sumeru scholar and local Conry enthusiast Zandik. According to the records scattered in Sumeru, Zandik was a man who experimented on the Aranara and came to the conclusion that by controlling the Aranara, human intelligence could be elevated to a whole new level and humanity could transcend the earthly boundaries. It's also heavily implied that he killed a fellow researcher. All deplorable things that the Academia would understandably not want him back for. But how did Dottore gain the ability to manipulate not only the Academia, but the people of Sumeru? Manipulation of people can be achieved without total physical control of the person. With proper psychological manipulation, it is entirely possible to lead people along under the illusion of autonomous choice. He already had the people of Sumeru under metaversal manipulation with the dream experiment, if he was indeed involved with the events of the latest Archon quest. The 3.1 trailer seems to indicate that Dottore did something to cause these people to be in an altered state of joy and adoration. Essentially, he's gained the ability to manipulate human constitution and behavior in some manner. There's definitely a meta-level plot at play here, but the bait for the Academia to allow Dottore back in the first place could be related to what they were trying to accomplish with the samsara. Remember, the samsara is a cycle, the repeating events we witnessed during the Subseru's festival. If you happen to watch my previous theory video on why kusanali equals Drukadevata makes sense, we came to the conclusion that Drukadevata may have exchanged memories for power in a last-ditch attempt against something during the Cataclysm. This encounter could have resulted in an extreme depletion of Drukadevata's power, reverting her to an infantile state or effectively killing her. One possibility that the experiment was trying to accomplish is the harvesting of dreams and knowledge in order to reverse Rukkhadevata's exchange and restore her to her original state, hence her revival. To recap, Rukkhadevata exchanged knowledge for power, and sacrificing memories or knowledge positively translates to more power, as seen with the genesis of the Ashvata tree in the conclusion of the Aranyaka Part 2. If you can exchange knowledge for power, does the exchange work in the opposite direction? Can you exchange power for knowledge? The answer is yes. We have an example in our lovely librarian Lisa. According to Character Story 5, Lisa had come to the realization that sumeru scholars and sages would make drastic trade-offs in exchange for knowledge and power, the severity of which is cited as Lisa's reason for returning to Mondstadt after just 2 years of advanced studies. According to her vision story, we learn that through the aid of her vision, Lisa acquired the knowledge that she had sought. For whatever reason, the gods gave humans the key to changing everything, but they did not explain the costs involved. Lisa traded the power of her vision for knowledge of the truth of the world, an exchange of power for knowledge. This could also be the reason why Lisa's vision is visibly smaller than the other visions in Mondstadt. Coincidentally, Lisa's vision is an Electro vision. Keep this in mind for later. So we've established that the Academia and Fatui are working together to fulfill each other's nefarious demands, but this does bring up a pressing question. Does Dottore have the Dendro Gnosis already? I want to say no. If Dottore already had the Dendro Gnosis, I'm not sure that he would still be in Sumeru, unless he hadn't quite perfected the system of how to use it just yet, and he seems to still be actively researching the Aranara, which are essentially manifestations of Dendro, the power to move between dreams and reality, something that the Dendro Gnosis can clearly do with ease. So while he might not have the Dendro Gnosis at the moment, he's perfectly poised to acquire not one, but 2 Gnoses, the Dendro Gnosis and the Electro Gnosis. So what is Scaramouche's involvement in the Sumeru plot? To answer this question, we first need to look into the significance of Dendro and Electro together. According to the 3.0 trailer that introduces the Dendro element, developers note that catalyzed reactions originate from a collision between the energy aspect from the Electro element and the wisdom aspect of the Dendro element. This phenomenon between Dendro and Electro has a very deep connection with the local history of Sumeru. 3.0 also added a second tier to reactions in the form of Hyperbloom and Burgeon, but right now we'll focus on Hyperbloom, which is the Dendro-Electro-Hydro reaction. The Hyperbloom reaction and the 3 elements that it consists of could represent the Goddess of Flowers, Rukkhadevata, and the Scarlet King Deshret, the 3 god kings of Sumeru who happen to all be friends. The Goddess of Flowers could be represented by Hydro, since Hydro dancer Nilu is enamored by her, Rukkhadevata represents Dendro, and King Deshret could represent Electro. Remember that catalyzed reactions are considered a collision between Dendro and Electro, and similarly, King Deshret and Rukkhadevata had a falling out after the death of the Goddess of Flowers. King Deshret may have been inspired by Set, the Egyptian god of deserts and storms, who was also known as the Lord of the Red Land, aka Scarlet King. Could Scaramouche, powered by the Electro Gnosis, be a vessel for a revived King Deshret? First of all, this would mean that the Fatui are 2-timing the Academia and the Eremites, which kinda makes sense, since when have the Fatui ever not disrespected their partners in business? They scammed Mondstadt, they attempted to scam Inazuma, and the only reason Zhongli had actual partner compliance was because the Tsaritsa respected him enough to be like, "Can I have your Gnosis, bro?" Honestly, a potential war between the Academia and Eremites is something they'd want in order to cover up or distract from their activities, which would be in true Fatui fur-lined fashion, by the way. Dottore did in fact modify Scaramouche in order to handle the Gnosis, but would Scaramouche be capable of harnessing the powers of King Deshret? I believe this depends on if Scaramouche was built to harness Electro energy versus ley line energy. If Scaramouche was specialized for only being a vessel for the Electro Archon, then it might not be possible. If Scaramouche was built simply to run off pure elemental ley line energy, then it might be possible. It all depends on whether or not King Deshret is an Electro god. Either way, I believe Scaramouche is merely here as a distraction, a setup for Dottore to steal the Dendro and Electro Gnosis. We've established that Dendro and Electro being paired together is definitely not coincidental, as it has deep ties to Sumeru's history. The Dendro element represents wisdom or knowledge, while the Electro element represents energy or power, and the resultant reaction from their collision is called Quicken. So, what is Dottore's actual plan? Is he trying to make a supercomputer out of Scaramouche by imbuing him with both the Dendro and Electro Gnosis? Will his circuits overload, causing him to factory reset, and boom, we get good guy Scaramouche who doesn't remember all the atrocities he committed in Inazuma? I think the real answer might be worse than that. According to the 2.8 Hidden Strife event, Albedo tells Diluc in a letter his suspicions that only the Abyss Order is able to extract information from the Irminsul or the ley lines, which are essentially its roots. From the Raiden Shogun story quest, we learn that memories are absorbed into the ley lines, and they are essentially the database containing all memories and events that happen in Teyvat. We learn in Sumeru that Dendro can be used to access the Irminsul as it is the root of Dendro power. Greater Lord Durukitavata was directly tied to it. She was also tied to her Gnosis. You can exchange knowledge for power and power for knowledge. I believe Il Dottore plans to use both the Dendro Gnosis and the power of the Electro Gnosis to extract information from the Irminsul at an incredibly quickened rate. Essentially, he plans to make a copy of the Irminsul database and add fatui encryption. But what does he plan to do with the Irminsul once he's done? Burn it. If he's successful, then the fatui would single-handedly have the ultimate source of knowledge in the entire world of Teyvat. And knowledge is inevitably power. This theory was brought to you by the Conria program featuring Kaeya Expert and yours truly, the Minsleif Expert. I'm your leify Lore Minsleif, and if you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.
君の虜になってしまえばきっとこの夏は充実する